You know, when I saw this title, when I was looking at chipper, I was thinking of a wood chipper, of a person cut up into a quadrillion little pieces. I I didn't know that that meant an Irish restaurant. I had no idea that chipper was a word for small fast food restaurant. I had to look it up. I kept thinking, oh, she's going to be chopped up in a chipper. She wasn't. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina K-R-S-T-I-N-A. This is where I read books, talk about books, no special effects, no theme music, none of that fancy smancy stuff going on here. And I had a big problem with this book. Huge problem in my little head. It was only in me. It was nobody else. It was just me. But the whole family goes on vacation. The entire family goes on vacation. And they get to the location, and just as they get to the location, there's a murder. And Siobhan assists with the case. She dives headlong into the case. Well, MacDara hangs out with the family. And I'm like, one, they called it this like honeymoon situation, but they took the whole family on. Honeymoon holiday situation. They took the entire family with them. Now, he is the senior officer. He's also her husband. This is supposed to be their honeymoon. He leaves her to go investigate, and he goes with the family. Now, all right, yeah, she's the main person. You know, she can also do for herself. She's an independent person. She can investigate a case by herself. But they're supposed to be on their honeymoon, and they're supposed to be together on their honeymoon. And yet he leaves her. He abandons her in a foreign town. Well, you know, it's still in the same country, but it's, you know, on her own in a place where she doesn't know anybody. And he goes and hangs with the family, and she investigates the case. That just irked the life out of me. I do not know why. I mean, he is the senior detective sergeant, and she's just the Garda, and he leaves her to investigate the case in a foreign place or not familiar place and goes off with the family. That just irked the life out of me. So that was like the initial thing. So this lady's murder is complicated, and there's quite a few subplots to it, and it turns out she was blackmailing people, and she was elderly, and she was in the midst of a divorce, and her and her husband were in competing chippers. She wanted the restaurant to be, they ended up doing Mr. Chipper's him and Mrs. Chipper's her instead of Mr. and Mrs. Chipper's or a joint place or anything like that. They ended up getting to this big huge thing. But so they meet some nice people that supposedly take them in. They get in the restaurant. They get in the B&B, and just there's so much stuff. Like the lead investigator's not investigating all that much, and Siobhan is doing most of the investigating, and she's talking to the state people, and she's doing this, and she's doing that, and she's doing all this interviewing, and people are wondering why she's doing all this interviewing, because she's not the local guard, and all this stuff is going on. And McDara is still out with the family. And then she's like giving him little instructions like, oh, go play golf with this big shot so you can talk to him and ask him some questions on the side. So, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't, you know, but she's my author. I've been reading this series, and I wanted to stop and read it while I had the chance before I decided to, you know, because they're waiting on opening the Sullivan Six, their restaurant. And there's a smidgen of a flirtation romance, but there's nothing. It's totally G, maybe? Well, except for the murder part. And even that's G. Total cozy G. Total cozy G. But in the end, you find out who the murderer is, and there's a little bit of a twist with that. And then you find out there's another twist to that. So there's a couple of twists at the end that you really don't see coming. It's a very multi-layered thing. There's blackmail going on, there's some side stuff going on, there's some intrigue going on, there's some family stuff going on. And Siobhan works most of the case by herself until this one point where the local investigator can't do it anymore for a conflict of interest, and McDara jumps in and he works with her the tail end of the case, the tail end of the book, which is, I think, it should have been to start with. Instead of him going off with the family and her going to the crime scene and her doing the investigation, they were supposed to be on their honeymoon, and there was not a single drop of spending the night with her husband or having a private drink with her husband or having a private beat. None of that stuff happened. None of that sleeping late morning in with your husband on the honeymoon. None of that stuff happened. None. Totally. It was all the family stuff. Mostly eating and discussing the case. So that's about it. Like I said, except for the twisty turnies at the end. It's like a slow walk in the park. Every chapter you get just a kernel of information. Smaller than C.S. Harris, which, by the way, I just saw coming attraction for the next book. I can't wait. But, just a small little kernel of something. It's like a slow walk in the park. And then when you get like almost to the end of the book, then it starts jumping and all these things start to happen. This happens and that happens and that happens and there's a twist and there's a turn and there's a twist. Oh, wait a minute. That's not exactly it. I may have said it this way, and I may lead you to believe that it's A and B happen, but there's a C and D behind it. So starts off with a little feud between a husband and wife over their little chipper restaurant. They sell fish and chips. He uses beef oil. She uses vegetable oil. Hers is more healthier. She claims to have the better secret sauce. And then they stay at this B&B, and the B&B guy seems really friendly until he turns on them and kicks them all out. But there's some twisty turnies there. There's some reasons what's going on here. It's a really interesting little really small town thing. So it's just, 2 people die. 2 people. But most of the case is investigating the one murder of the woman who, she never even occurred to her. She's all angry because the repairman didn't come that morning. And the reason the repairman didn't come was because somebody else pretended to be her to cancel the appointment. So she spent the next morning screaming and yelling at the repair guy, where was he, where was he, where was he? And just before he shows up and she's getting all rattled, someone leaves a can of spray paint on her front door. And she never thinks of who left it or where it came from or who did this or nothing. She just immediately goes, oh, dear. And she runs across the street and spray paints the competition sign. Never even occurs to her that someone left this here so she would leave so they could set up the place for her murder. Never even occurs to her. She's just so angry at the whole thing, at the repair guy not showing up, at the husband stuff, all this stuff. She never even thinks about it. And she just goes. So, to find out who murdered Vera and who possibly murdered the B&B guy, I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler, and who inherits the B&B is a big surprise. That's a twisty turny, because the people involved didn't see that coming. And who else had a motive for murder in this? There's a couple of twisty turnies at the end you don't see coming. They just twist. And she's like, here's your murderer on a platter. And then at the last minute, she's like, no, not exactly. So check it out. Murder in the Irish Chipper. Have a good one.